Hey guys, what's up? It's Snake and I'm back, and here we are in episode 4. And what I've gone and done is split it up into 2 parts. But before we get to what the parts are going to be about, I'd just like to talk about some comments I got from the last video about the Hanging Man and about Peter's grave in the iPod and iPhone versions. And I just wanted to say that Peter is the Hanging Man. We know that he's the Hanging Man because they make mention of him in one of the V. Bush files or the T. Walker or Oppenheimer or whatever, one of the files in the console that you can access when you break out of the straps in the loading, in the main menu of Black Ops. Why is it different in the iPod version or the iPhone version? I'm not quite sure, but there is no Hanging Man in the iPhone version, just Peter's grave. So this is also another indication that the Hanging Man is Peter. And both possibilities line up well with the story that I've put together, because after Verrückt, after he cut his arm off to stop the infection, he's at an asylum. It's a medical facility, and even though he's a scientist and not a doctor, I would assume he must have some rudimentary first aid ability, enough to be able to cauterize the wound and sew it up or wrap it up or whatever. He was in a kitchen, so he could have easily burned the end of it, or I don't know if that's actually possible. You see it in movies, so I guess it could work in video games too, right? And then he gets to Shinonuma, and in the iPhone version he must die and they bury him, but in the console version it seems like right before the first outbreak at Shinonuma, the one that precedes our arrival at Shinonuma with the 4 characters, the outbreak must occur, and he decides, you know what, I'm done with this. Farouk was way too much for me. I'm just going to go ahead and kill myself, and then I don't have to deal with it. Which we also find a Hanging Man in this map. So obviously, a lot of people would prefer to hang themselves rather than be eaten alive. So I'm just going to add that. Now, the 2 parts to this episode. The first part here, we're going to be talking about actual history, or historical fiction, I guess you could call it. That is to say, Riese is an actual place that existed during World War II, but a lot of things like Die Glock and stuff like that is all conspiracy theory and speculation and hearsay. But that's all what we're going to be talking about now. And then in part 2, we're going to get into the actual video game story and talk about our characters and things like that. So let's get started. Der Riese in German means the giant, and that was the code name for the project. Now, the giant, or Der Riese, actually covers 7 different facilities that are all interconnected by passageways, caverns, and tunnels throughout the underneath of the Owl Mountains chain. The Owl Mountains, the mountain chain, which is in Poland, but at this time is in Germany during World War II. Now, among other things, it was speculated that they were working on wonder weapons and reanimation of dead flesh, anti-gravity machines, all that sort of stuff. And one of the facilities that is connected through the tunnels is called the Hinge, or the Fly Trap. Why it's called the Fly Trap, I'm not really sure. I couldn't figure that out. But the interesting thing about it is the structure called the Fly Trap looks exactly like the fly trap that we see off of the map in this level. It's it's probably about a 2-story tall structure made of concrete, and it's circular in nature, and the top of it is all connected, but it's supported by somewhere between 6 and 8 beams. Now, they said that what it was an infrastructure to hold a coolant system, and it does look similar to other coolant system structures of the time, but not exactly the same. And to this date, no one actually knows for sure what the hinge or the fly trap was used for. But in one of the books on Die Glock, and of course Die Glock means the bell, they talk about a device that was created and tested at the fly trap. And underneath, the bell was suspended, and underneath they would put these ceramic tiles, I guess, to either absorb the heat or push energy back towards towards the bell, so the ground underneath the structure wouldn't be destroyed. And it said that these tiles would have to be burned in a special furnace after a couple of tests, just like the furnace you saw me looking at. And there are tiles too that you see scattered around this level as well. So it seems like this is what it's hinting towards. Now, the bell was said to be an anti-gravity generator, and when you activate the fly trap in this level, these items, there's like a teddy bear and a perk bottle and all that kind of thing, are at the center of the fly trap, and when you activate the fly trap, they actually float up off of the ground, defying gravity, and then get shot off across the map for you to find. And they all glow that sort of greenish yellow that the power-ups glow as well. I don't know if that's necessarily connected or not, but it would seem so, because the power-ups seem to be dropped by Sam through her telekinetic power, and it's possible that she's the one that also that she gets this from, I don't know, from fusing with the bell, which when I say the bell, of course, I mean the teleporter. Because if you listen to descriptions of the bell, it talks about it being a 9-foot tall structure made of metal and looking similar to a bell with an opening in the front, much like the teleporter is, much like the teleporter looks like. Two other interesting notes is that the code name for Die Glocke in the books, the code name is supposed to be Chronos, which is Greek for time or year. Time, maybe that's a hint at the fact that the teleporter can be used to travel through time, as we'll see in later levels. The other neat thing is, if you turn a bell upside down, or if you turn an acorn upside down, it looks like a bell. And the reason why I bring that up is because during the 1960s, there are sightings of UFOs in the Pittsburgh area, and the device, or UFO, the flying machine, is said to look like that of an acorn. And so yeah, an upside down acorn, a bell, it seems like a little bit of a stretch, except for the fact that artists have actually recreated in paper mache what the UFO was supposed to look like, and it looks suspiciously like drawings from books on Die Glocke, on the bell, and their similarities are very strange. Now, the way the bell achieved whatever it was supposed to, whether it was anti-gravity or teleportation or who knows, the way it was supposed to achieve its goal was these two cylinders that were encased inside would spin in opposite directions. Much like rollers do, like if you're rolling pasta, or if you have a clothes roller, like an old-fashioned one where you'd wash it and you'd scrub it on that weird ridge thing, and then you'd feed it through the roller and it would dry it out. Now, if that analogy seems kind of strange to you, what about this analogy? The two cylinders spinning in opposite directions is a lot like the two cylinders inside the pack-a-punch machine that spin in opposite directions to take your gun in, pack-a-punch it, and then push it back out. The other neat thing about the similarities between Die Glocke in reality and our teleporter is that inside of the cylinders, they would place the energy source, which was called red mercury, and it was this liquid or liquidish type metal that gave off sort of a reddish purplish glow, much like the color of your guns when you shoot them after they've been pack-a-punched. The other thing too is Die Glocke, or the bell, is supposed to give off this weird bluish kind of light, just like the kind of light the teleporters give off when you teleport, or the dogs give off when they teleport, and all that sort of thing. The other interesting thing too is when you listen to the radios in this level, they talk about tests that they're doing on the teleporters, and when they put people in, either they become zombies or they sort of dissolve into some sort of weird black gooey goop kind of thing. They're just destroyed pretty much. And in the stories of Die Glocke, something like 60 scientists were killed during work on this because of the exposure to the radiation from Zerum 525, which was the code name for that red mercury substance. And it's said that it would actually turn people into a black goop. So there's that similarity as well. Now, the last thing I want to mention before I let you go and we come back with part 2 where we discuss the story is this. If you remember, there was a name written on the wall in Beirut in big red letters, and it was Hans. And the only Hans that seems to be related to anything in the zombie storyline is a Hans Kammler, who was an SS officer who actually gave over Die Glock to the Americans, and it was then transported to Area 51, which ties in everything really perfectly, because now we know who Hans was, and the fact that he was working with the Americans makes sense because so was Peter, so Peter would know his name. And the Americans, which we'll find out later on in 5, are the only ones that have figured out a way to actually make the teleporters work so that living tissue can be transported, as well as zombies, of course. And so they must have had access to the original teleporter, or at least one fully operational teleporter, so they could work on it and fix it and figure out some way to make the teleporters that we see in 5 actually work correctly, unlike the teleporters here, which we'll find out in the next video, destroy any living tissue that goes through it or changes it in some fashion. So that's going to be it for today, and stay tuned for part 2. It's coming this week. Peace.